Today I'm going to be looking at a 60-year history of UK banknotes. So let's start off with the current set of UK banknotes which we still use. These are the 6th series in a set of banknotes that dates back to 1928, and all the designs have been used within the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. Let's have a closer look. Here's the polymer plastic £5 issued in September 2016, which has had a bit of a mixed reception. Some people quite like it, some people don't, and Churchill has finally made it onto a British banknote. Notice serial number just on the back, and you've got this holographic window in the bottom left which changes from 5 to pounds depending on the angle that you look at the note. Here's a space for the new £10 note, plastic again. It'll be Jane Austen and it'll come out in summer of 17. And like all British banknotes, the size increases with value, so it'll be bigger than the fiver but smaller than the old tenner. Onto the £20, probably the most common note in circulation in the UK at the moment. Holographic strip. Some of these bubbles change from a pound symbol to the number 20 depending on the angle at which you look at it. Serial numbers only on the back, and this features Adam Smith and his famous division of labour in pin manufacturing. Incidentally, all the people who feature on UK banknotes have to be British and have to have been dead for about 50 years, so Churchill just makes it there onto the fiver. Onto the 50, this is the one that nobody seems to want to accept. And it features two people, which is a bit unusual. James Watt and Matthew Boulton, who everybody's heard of. This latest series of banknotes is called Series F. So going back a bit, this is Series E, the latest revised Series E, and this is 1999, 2000 and 2002. We still use this one. But we also use the Churchill note as well, and we still use the tenner. Up close on the fiver we have the recently introduced hologram, which changes from a Britannia to a 5 symbol, watermark of the Queen in the middle, 2 serial numbers, and on the back is Elizabeth Fry. Moving on to the tenner, similar design, and on the back is Charles Darwin. Notice the stitched thread down the note there, which was common to all these notes. And moving on to the 20, familiar note. This is a very early example, and this featured Elgar. So these are the 5th series of banknotes, or the later version of the 5th series, dating from 1999, Series E. Going back to the 90s now, this is the original Series E, 1990, 92, 91 and 94. And this was common with series of banknotes. They were all issued at different times. They were never issued all at once. So, looking at the fiver, no hologram now, we've just got a coloured symbol and still got the watermark and the 2 serial numbers. However, this one has the extra security feature of having the different size digits here that change colour as you go across. We've still got the stitched thread and a copyright symbol there saying "Don't copy." And also the very early fivers of this type, you could hardly see the £5 symbol there, so that was changed a few years later for a darker symbol. And on the back is George Stephenson. The tenner had a similar design. This crown was later replaced with a £10 symbol. And on the back we've got Charles Dickens. And the £10 symbol was also featured here in later versions as well. Moving on to the 20. Same thing again, this crown was replaced with a £20 symbol, and on the back of this one we have Michael Faraday, and also the £20 symbol appeared here as well on later versions. The £50 stayed the same all the way through, and that just appeared in this one form which had houblon on the back. So this is Series E, dating from 1990. Oh wow, look at this, Series D from the 70s. The lovely little pound note here started out life in 1978, 71 for the fiver, 75 for the tenner, 1970 for the £20 note, and the £50 note wasn't issued until 1981. Incidentally, this pound note was withdrawn in 1988, so it was used for 5 years whilst we had the pound coin. Here it is, the last pound note. This time you've got no holograms or anything. You haven't even got the stitched thread. It's a solid metal strip, and on the back was Sir Isaac Newton, and also he had a watermark on the right hand side here. Onto the fiver. This was the blue Wellington fiver, familiar to some, with the watermark of Wellington in the space. And the £10 was, of course, Florence Nightingale. Incidentally, through a lot of the history of banknotes, the colours remain the same for the different values. So the fiver was always blue, and the pound was always green, and the tenner was brown. The 20 was this lovely coloured note, featuring St George killing the dragon on the front there, and a watermark of William Shakespeare, who appeared on the back. And finally onto the 50, you very rarely saw any of these. Phoenix rising from the ashes, and on the back we had Sir Christopher Wren. So those were the Series D notes, mainly from the 70s. And onto my favourite set of notes, the Series C from the 60s, 10 shilling note from 1961, the famous pound note from 1960, and the 5 and 10 from 63 and 64 respectively. A lovely set of notes. These notes just featured lovely spirograph designs and no people. There were nobody on the back. This just featured a Britannia and also had a watermark of the Britannia face. Onto the pound, which is probably the most loved out of all the banknotes. Classic present that you get in your Christmas or birthday card. It had a lovely distinct green colour and lovely patterns all over. And more of them on the back there featuring Britannia again. Onto the £5. This was a beautiful rich blue design, and this particular one features Britannia on the back again. They still had metal threads going down the middle of them, but pretty much that was all there was. And finally onto the £10. You were really wealthy if you had one of these. I hardly saw any at the time. And this featured a lion on the back. So these were the Series C notes from the 60s. Series B wasn't a series at all, it just consisted of this one blue fiver from 1957, and I don't have one. And finally Series A. This is from the 50s, this particular one, and there were only 2 notes really, the green pound and the brown 10 shilling, and they go all the way back to 1928, apart from during the war when they issued them in blue colours to save on ink. So there it is, some banknotes from the UK over the past 60 years.